Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Senkos and their extreme versatility for bass fishing. Stay tuned. Now, many of you may know what a Senko is, but if you don't, a Senko is a straight-tailed soft plastic worm. Very simple looking worm, plain looking worm with no extra features. Just a plain straight-tailed worm that can be fished a wide variety of ways. And Senkos, in my opinion, are one of the best, if not the best, soft plastic out there because of their extreme versatility. Senkos can be fished deep, they can be fished shallow, they can be fished fast or slow, in clear water or murky water. They can be fished when the water is freezing cold or super hot. They'll catch fish year-round in nearly every place throughout the country. So overall, Senkos are just a super great soft plastic bait that can be rigged a lot of different ways to catch big bass. Now first off, one of the best ways to rig a Senko is just on a standard Texas rig. You just got my flipping hook here. It's the Trocar flipping hook. Take my Senko and rig it up there Texas style. And this style of rigging this bait is great for flipping around pads, grass, shoreline brush, and cover. I've got it rigged on a 1/4 ounce tungsten weight. It's a great little Texas rigged bait. Weedless bait, can be flipped around all kinds of vegetation and cover, and especially here in Florida, it's a great way to catch some of those big fish, especially during the spring when they're up shallow. So fishing a Texas rig Senko like this around vegetation, shoreline vegetation and cover is a great option. Now another way you can Texas rig a Senko is on a weighted hook. Now this is a wide gap, extra wide gap hook, a Gamakatsu extra wide gap hook with a 1/8 ounce weight on there. And a lot of times I like to rig my Senkos on this weighted hook because it allows them to fall, fall a little bit faster, but still have that slow finesse style approach, and leaves that bait in the strike zone for quite a while. That Senko is just going to fall straight to the bottom and appears an easy meal to bass. So that's another way I like to Texas rig a Senko, is on that weighted EWG hook. Now another way to rig a Senko is on a Carolina rig. Now this is just a traditional Carolina rig. I've got my weight pegged about 12 to 14 inches above my hook. And I just take my Senko and rig it up on my hook, on the same flipping hook. I got my weight, like I said, 12 to 14 inches above my bait. And that Carolina rig is great for fishing around sandbars, shell bars, and channels and creek mouths, and where there's moving water. Great to drag along the bottom and have that bait just kind of flutter behind that weight when drug along the bottom. Another great way to rig a Senko is on a Carolina rig. Now another good way to rig a Senko is on a shaky head. This is just a 1/8 ounce shaky head jig head. And I just take my Senko and screw it up on that screw lock. Stick my hook through so it's weedless. Then you got your shaky head, and you can fish this under docks, fish around brush piles, rock piles, anything like that, any kind of cover in deep water. If the fish are being finicky, this is a great way to fish that Senko and get fish to bite. Also, I like to fish a Senko just on a straight ball head jig sometimes. Sometimes just that extremely simple look of that stick bait can get those finicky fish to bite. Just fished on a simple 1/8 ounce ball head jig like this. Nothing complicated about it. Just a simple Senko on a ball head jig. I've caught a lot of fish that way, just kind of hopping it off the bottom, similar to a shaky head. But I also like just a ball head jig if the fish are being finicky and I'm struggling to get bit. And another productive way to rig a Senko, if the fishing is tough, if it's slow, I just take one of my standard 5-inch Senkos and I tear it in half. And then I take a ball head or a mushroom head Ned rig, and I'll just rig that little half a Senko up on there, and I've got a little Ned rig. Now if fish are super finicky, and if I'm fishing a little bit deeper water, say over rock piles, around brush piles, and the fish are not biting too good, a little simple Ned rig like that, just bounced off the bottom and hop slowly right along the bottom, is a great option. And that Ned rig is a super simple bait, as you can tell. There's nothing complicated about that at all. Just like a 2.5 inch bait rigged up on that hook, or rigged up on that jig head. But it catches fish. A lot of times fish don't want anything complicated, they just want it simple, and that Ned rig is a great way to go. And another way you can fish a Senko, which I don't have with me here now, is on a drop shot. With a drop shot, you just take your bait and put it about 12 inches above your weight. Your weight's sitting on the bottom, and that bait's kind of just suspended and shaking above your weight. And that's a great rig to fish around offshore fish, that are in deeper water, around brush piles, rock piles, stuff like that. The drop shot is another one of those really good finesse worm tricks that'll get those finicky bass to bite. And finally, my personal favorite way to rig a Senko is on a Neko rig or Wacky rig. I've caught some big bass the last few years on a Wacky rig and Neko rig. And we'll start with a Wacky rig. I just take my Senko, I just take a standard rubber O-ring, and I'll just run that O-ring about halfway down my bait. Now after I get my O-ring on that Senko, I just take my Wacky Hook. This is a 1/0 VMC Wacky Hook. I just slide it through that O-ring. And what that O-ring does is it helps you save baits. If I were to just hook a Senko through the middle with no O-ring, which you can do, and it will catch fish, but as the fish, you catch fish on it, that Senko is going to rip and you're going to lose more baits without that O-ring. So with the O-ring, I'm able to save more baits because it's not ripping the worm. It's just going straight through that rubber O-ring, and it's not doing anything to hurt the bait. So that's a good way to save worms. It's by sticking an O-ring on there, and you still catch the same amount of fish. It doesn't affect your catch rate. But that's a great way to catch a lot of bass. Like I said before, another really simple rig. It doesn't get much simpler than that. I'd skip this under docks, along bluff walls, down sea walls, and other shoreline vegetation and cover. It's obviously not weedless, so you can't throw it in the grass, but fish on the grass, edge of the grass, and other edge of other vegetation and stuff. It's a great bait for targeting those spawning fish as well. If you know you've got fish spawning in an area, throwing a Wacky rig up there will irritate them enough to get them to bite. They can't stand a little Wacky rig or Senko work through their bedding area. So keep that in mind. And now onto a Neko rig, which is very similar to a Wacky rig, but you just take a little what they call a nail weight. This is a 1/32 ounce nail weight, and I'll just stick it in the head of my Senko. Make sure it's in there good and tight, and then I'll take my Neko hook. This is this is a 1/0 VMC Neko hook. And again, before I hook the bait, I want to take another O-ring, and I'm going to stick it up on that bait. But instead of going halfway down, I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way down the bait. Say about right in there somewhere, 3/4 of the way down the bait. That bait's going to fall straight to the bottom, and it's going to sit on the bottom like that. So you can bounce it off the bottom, and it'll look like a worm or some sort of intruder feeding on bass eggs or invading their territory. And fish hate that, so they'll attack that thing when it gets anywhere near their area, their territory. So that Neko rig is a great bait for, like I said, fishing around docks. That's my favorite way to fish a Wacky rig and a Neko rig, is by skipping it under docks. It's a very easy bait to skip under docks, so that's my favorite way to fish it. But like I said, you can also fish around offshore brush piles or around grass lines, around rock piles, anything like that. Any kind of cover or structure, and a Neko rig and Wacky rig will excel for sure. Now, as far as colors go for the Senkos that I use, I like to keep it pretty simple. I stick to 2 basic color patterns, and that is green pumpkin or watermelon green, some sort of shade of green, and a darker black and blue, some sort of straight black or June bug color. And the reason being, in clear water or clean water, I like a green pumpkin or green watermelon green because it looks more natural to those fish. It's going to appear more natural in that clean water habitat. In darker water where it's more stained or tannic, I like those darker black and blue or June bug colors because it gives off a bigger silhouette, and if fish are struggling to see in that murkier water, they can pick up on a darker bait with a bigger silhouette better than a green pumpkin or some other color. So keep that in mind as well. Now, as far as my favorite brands of Senkos, I'm not too brand specific. I think a lot of different Senkos are productive and catch fish. Now, Yamamoto makes a great Senko. It's kind of like the original Senko. However, they are kind of on the expensive side, $8 to $10 a bag, depending on where you buy them. But they're excellent Senkos. They catch a lot of fish. Yum also makes a good Senko. They are much less expensive, only $3 to $4 a bag, depending on where you buy them. Despite the fact that they're less expensive, they still catch fish. And Exxon Lures also makes a great Senko, and they're somewhere between $5 and $6, $7 a pack. Just somewhere in the middle of those of Yum and Yamamoto Senkos, but all three of those Senkos catch fish, and there's tons of other brands out there that will catch fish. Anywhere from top of the line to off brands. So it's really just about your preference. Just pick one that you like, build confidence with it, and you can catch fish on it. A Senko is a Senko in my mind, so it's just a matter of your preference. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I was able to help you break down some of the best ways to rig a Senko and really bring to light the great versatility this bait has. Be sure to give Senkos a try the next time you're out on the water. Feel free to leave a comment down below and let us know what your favorite Senko is and what your favorite way to rig them is. We'd love to hear from you. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel up in this corner, check out our last video in this corner, and there'll be a lot more exciting and helpful fishing videos headed your way. We'll talk to you soon.